Good afternoon, everybody. I am Scott Allen Davis, Director of Operations at SEEL, and welcome to our second webinar in our 2021 webinar series. And today it is virtual assessments. Are they here to stay? I'm excited to have with me three amazing people to lend their expertise to this conversation. First, we have Sharon Dorado, which is from Guidehouse. I'm Shannon. Hi, Shannon. I hope I didn't say Sharon. Shannon. And I know you, Shannon. So Secondly, we have Chris Nikes from Indiana, Michigan Power. How you doing, Chris? And then last but definitely not least, my colleague here from SEAL, Ann Fowler. Hello, Ann. So we are going to have a great conversation. I'm going to first allow each of our panelists to introduce themselves. I do want to just remind you that if you're not speaking, to stay muted. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We will address them and get to all of them, as many as possible, that is. And I also want to direct you in the chat. We're going to put the link to our last webinar if you didn't see it. We did talk about small business and is it the, should it be really equated to IQ for the C&I side? Great conversation we had earlier in Q1 of this year. So this is our Q2 webinar discussion. So Shannon, if you could go ahead and just tell us who you are, what you do at Guidehouse, and your experience within virtual assessments, that would be great.
Sure. So my name is Shannon Dorado. I work at Guidehouse. I'm an associate director there in the energy, sustainability, and infrastructure practice. I'm based out of San Francisco, and I work with clients nationwide to complete impact, process, and net to gross portfolio evaluations. I also conduct market research in the energy industry, but I have a background in engineering. Primarily, I focus on evaluation. And most recently, I piloted a virtual verification for a residential program. So that's my primary experience with virtual assessments. It's more on the evaluation side, conducting verification virtually as opposed to going in the field.
Thank you. I didn't know that you were an engineer, Shannon. So
yeah.
Chris, I'm going to pivot over to you. If you could tell us who you are, what you do at Indiana Michigan Power, as well as your experience with virtual assessments.
Very good. My name is Chris Nikes. I'm with Indiana Michigan Power. I have been in the energy field for going on 20 years. I started out as a field auditor, not with Indiana Michigan Power, but recently with Indiana Michigan Power within the last 5 years. So basically, I've been in houses. Now I'm behind the desk, kind of overseeing that. I am the EE DSM program coordinator for Indiana Michigan Power with the weatherproofing focus. We have been running virtual audits with I&M now probably 10, 12 months. And we finally have seen some traction with them. I'm BPI certified. I'm certified for lead-based paint inspection, asbestos inspection, that kind of stuff. So I come to us from the building science side. So.
Thank you. And last again, but definitely not least, Ann.
Hi, as Scott mentioned, I am with SEAL. I'm the portfolio director for our consumers energy programs here at SEAL. So working on both the residential and the small business side. Been in the energy industry for about 10 years now, with SEAL for about 3. I've got thrown into this virtual assessment world like most people during 2020 when Michigan pulled everyone out of in-person meetings and appointments, and we needed to come up with a solution for how to get savings virtually. So it was definitely an exciting and quick experience learning curve. So excited to talk about it.
I'm excited to really hear about it, Ann, and you really pivoted to our first question. So I'm going to start it with you, and then Chris, I'm coming to you with the same question. But you've already shared that your program offers virtual assessments and kind of why you started them. If you could talk a little bit about when you started and how it's been going since that start.
Right. So as I mentioned, this was really a response to the state shutting down here in Michigan from COVID. And we had talked internally at SEAL for a little bit about virtual assessments, and consumers had been talking about it as a pilot idea for their residential programs. But the COVID shutdown really raised the stakes of needing to pivot really quickly to virtual assessments since we didn't have in-person opportunities. So we started working on developing something in April of last year, and then started implementing it in July. So it was a quick development. We really focused on how could we do something that would best serve our residential customers. We work with a lot of more senior customers who may have technology limitations, as well as more rural customers who have bandwidth issues with using smart apps. So our team settled on, and it was really a program developed by our auditors. In a lot of ways, we did a lot of design thinking, rapid prototyping work with our design or with our field auditors to design the program. And we came up with something that required a little less bandwidth, that had a pre-survey that customers would fill out to allow us to collect the information that we would normally collect in person, and then allow us to analyze that, schedule a phone call with the customer, go through a lot of what they would normally do in person, and then from that phone call, develop a personalized kit that we would then send out to the customers. So it mirrors what we were doing in person, but doing a lot of it over the phone, and also allowing for that pre-survey. Customers don't have to fully fill out that pre-survey, but the more information they give, the better place our auditor is in to have that conversation. But we help them through that process on the phone as well.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Ann. And Chris, what programs do you all have where you offer virtual assessments? And why did you start them? When did you start them? And how is that going?
Pretty much along the same line as Ann. I mean, we started our virtual assessment process back in April of 2020. Shortly after, a way to stay in contact with our customers, as well as still offer some energy saving things to them that we would do through the audit. Our audit process was in-house. Primarily before that, we were in the customer's homes, going through it, speaking with the customer, identifying energy saving issues that they had there. We switched to doing them over the phone. So we would ask the same questions. We would look at the same things virtually if possible. If we could, via Zoom or via FaceTime or some kind of virtual platform that way. And then we would, like Ann, we would build a customized kit and then get that to them either through a delivery method like FedEx or UPS, or we would actually drive it out to the house and deliver it contactlessly, leave it on the porch, or leave it in a garage or something of that nature. Recently, we have a little better handle on them. We actually offer a standardized kit for the customers based on the type of customer they are. When we started this, we were geared strictly at our electrical customers because that's the heating source that we were looking to basically help supplement. But now with the virtual audits, we're able to expand into our customers that have gas heat, but have, like an electric water heater. So we can offer water measures to those customers where if you're gas heat with a gas water heater, we have a kit for those customers as well that does not include energy saving water measures, just because we're not allowed to cross as a regulated utility. So with the standardized kitting, it is helped out quite a bit. What we find with the virtual audit process is that we're able to fit in more customers in a day. So for example, back when we were in person, if you would go out to a customer's house and for some reason they had to cancel the appointment or they weren't there or whatever, that kind of ruined most of your day. Now you can pivot to another customer or move on to someone else, and we can do 5, 6 audits in a day versus maybe only 1 or 2. So it's been a boon as far as outreach, and I believe as of now we've done almost 500 virtual assessments just this year. So it's a very beneficial thing for our customers, and actually a good driver for us to drive leads and find those customers.
So, Chris, just a follow-up question. You said you've done 500 so far this year. If you were in the field,
Correct.
how many would you have been able to do, just to give a comparison?
At this time in the field, we probably would have not even done 75 or 80 already. So it's, it's almost a 5-fold advantage for us at this point, based on the numbers so far.
Awesome.
So if you had told me, back in January, February, when we first put this together to go to the standardized kitting, that we were going to do 500 audits in 6 months, I would have shaken my head and bet against you, for sure. But it's been a great pivot for our program, and it's been very productive.
Great. Shannon, I'm going to come to you because in your intro, you talked about your experience with the virtual assessments, that you kind of did a study or whatnot. If you could unpack that, talk about what you've done a little bit, and share if it's available where people can find it, but talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, similar to Chris and Anne, due to COVID, one of the things that we as evaluators wanted to look into was how feasible is it to complete evaluation or verification of sites and energy efficiency measures virtually. So instead of, typically for evaluation, we would go to a site and in the field have a third party verify measures that's installed, and that's how we determine savings and installation rates. Without being able to access people's homes or businesses, we piloted a survey, an online survey that we offered. We piloted it on the residential side, so we haven't done it on the commercial side yet, where we asked the customers to verify for us and report in the survey, what measures were installed and which weren't. And to determine, how accurate these results are, we asked them to capture pictures to verify the measures as well. So we did this in parallel with fieldwork. It's kind of like a little experiment. We did a virtual assessment. We also did an in-field verification effort and compared the results of the two. And so far, we have analyzed the results. They're not available publicly yet, but we are working on developing a paper for the IEPC conference coming up. So it's something that will be out eventually.
When is that conference?
I think, unfortunately, it got pushed out until 2022.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. And so one of the things that Anne said was how her team crafted what that virtual assessment looks like. So I'm going to start with you, Shannon, and then I'm going to pivot to you, Chris. How did you all, design? Who was involved? How did you test it in terms of what that virtual assessment looks like? Was there pivots after you started? If you could share some of that with us, because some of the comments I'm seeing in the chat, this is the first time some people are hearing about virtual assessments. And so we can really educate people, to see how it works. So Shannon, if you could start with that.
Yeah, so from my perspective, right, which is evaluation, it's less about designing a kit that we offer to a customer for them to install and implement, products. It's more about the products that were previously installed and verifying that those are still installed and functioning at the site. So in order to do that, we decided we would email out a customized link to a survey where we were able to customize the surveys per customer based on what products we knew had been installed in their home, and ask them to verify if they were still installed and functioning. If they weren't, if they could provide an explanation as to why. And then as a final follow-up, we asked for photo evidence to confirm that it was still installed. So we just designed a survey. We had an online platform where we had, I think, for the program that we were evaluating, I think it was something like 90 questions, but it ended up being like a 15-minute survey, depending on how many products were installed at the site. And from there, we did our, we collected the data, and then we did our analysis based on customer reported data.
Okay, thanks, Shannon. And Chris, how did you all put yours together? Chris?
Started the virtual assessment process. It was very much, call a customer, see if they had capability to do a video chat, and ask those questions. If not, we did it over the phone. So, and then we would customize the kit that we would send to them. We pivoted because what was happening is we were using more resources, building those kits and trying to send them out rather than doing the virtual assessments. So what we did is we pivoted to a pre-made kit through a third-party vendor who ships those for us. We supply them with the name and the address, and we pretty much have them take care of the shipping, which frees us up to do more of that one-on-one time with our customers. The main focus of these virtual assessments was to stay in contact with our customers, whether they be a regular weatherproofing customer up in the state of Michigan, or an IQW or income qualified customer. So, and we were originally targeting, or still targeting, those most needy of our customers. We're looking at the IQPs because, let's face it, when you have an energy crunch or anything like this, target them as best as you can to do that. That's not to say that if you're a weatherproofing customer, we don't have an avenue for you. We do, but we're looking to get into those communities that struggle to make ends meet at times. So.
Okay, I'm going to pivot a little bit because we are getting quite a few questions in our chat, which is exciting. So I'm going to ask some of those before I go to our other planned questions. So one of the questions, and this one is for you, Ann, with your 90 question survey, what was your completion rate?
So I don't think it was 90 questions, so it's shorter than that, but it did seem a little lengthy at first, and we've shortened it since then to help increase the response. It was, somewhat mixed. I would say about 60% of the customers fully filled it out, 40% maybe only gave a few answers. So we did decide to shorten it, and that helped with the response rate, but we also made it clear, because we didn't want that to be a barrier to participation, that they don't have to fill it out completely, that we can help them through that process on the phone. But, there's more of them walking around trying to find information on the phone with us if they don't do that pre-survey. So we really want them to not use that as a barrier or a concern for participating in the program. But I would say about 60% filled it out completely.
And now I'm seeing in the chat that was actually for Shannon, not for Ann. So Shannon, if you want to chime in there.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and so sorry, I misspoke. Let me correct myself. I just looked it up because I pulled that number out of thin air. It was a 70 question survey. On average, it took about 16 minutes, and our completion rate was 9% for that survey, which is not that high, but I will say we completed the survey with almost 1,000 respondents within 3 weeks. So we were working on a very accelerated timeline. I think we might have been able to hit an even higher completion rate had we had more time to have the survey in the field.
And you said 9%?
9, that's right.
Okay. And for everyone, one of the questions that I see in here, and Chris, you can start, is when you were doing the virtual assessments, were you running into people having, particularly when you look at IQ folks, were you running into issues with people having access to internet or being able to do things virtually, maybe seniors or any of that? Did any of that come up?
That was a concern of ours initially,
Mhm.
but a lot of folks nowadays have a cell phone, so we were able to do a lot of the virtual assessments, even with the IQ folks, via FaceTime or another platform like Skype or something like that that will let us do it. And let a lot of the technology challenges comes with the older community because they're just not as tech savvy or they're not as comfortable around computers or their cell phone. So a lot of those, we would do actually, phone to phone for those folks. But no, it just reaching into the community was the initial challenge. But now that we're able to penetrate that community, we have a good response rate. The customers can, call us to set up an appointment, which is rare. A lot of it, we do a lot of marketing to our website, electricideas.com. There's a portal that they can sign up through for that. It generates a response for them automatically that you've got an appointment. The auditor will call you to set up your appointment, kind of thing. So that facilitates actually keeping that process moving. So it works fairly well. And then, we have obviously a set of standardized questions when you call. It's probably 9 or 10 that you ask depending upon what you see in the home as you go through. So, but yeah, that was one of our concerns initially, was technology challenges, but we found that almost everybody has an email or almost everybody has text, and we can also they use the video features on their phones very well.
Thanks, Chris. Ann or Shannon, did you run into those issues where internet or technology was a barrier? And if so, for which primarily for which populations?
So I'll just say it was interesting that since we do both market rate and income qualified for our program, we had about 30% more signups for virtuals since we offer both virtual and in-person now through the income qualified population. So I found that really interesting that a lot of folks in that population were gravitating towards the virtual assessment. That may also be partly because there was a lot of rural population there that we were reaching out to. We kept it intentionally low bandwidth. We've been looking at video options. We just, different video options work better on different platforms, and the issue of loading that up to someone's phone we were a little worried and hesitant about, so we opted to stay with a phone option. But this year Consumers is doing a evaluation of the virtual program, and we're in a unique position where there's two different implementation contractors doing two different styles virtual assessments, one that's more app-based and then ours that is just more phone-based. And so I think there will be a lot of lessons learned through that evaluation process about whether or not we need to offer more video options for customers.
Awesome. Anything to add there, Shannon, as it relates to the technology and access?
Not really, not regarding the technology. I will say, one of the barriers we had to overcome was conducting an online survey. We had to reach out via email, and we were only able to find decent email addresses for so much of the population. I think we might have ended up losing like 14% of our original sample due to erroneous emails. But on the technological side, I don't think we ran into too many issues, although maybe that's something for us to go back and look into, because with an online survey, maybe that's part of our completion rate issue. I'm not sure.
And you mentioned your list, if you will, or the population you was going after. Were you all, and this question is for everybody, but I'm going to start with you, Shannon. Was it a cold call list or just emails, or was it a targeted list that you were able to go after?
So for me, it was a targeted list. So I think I probably had a little bit easier than Ann and Chris because we were working with program participants. So they'd already participated in a program. We already knew which products they had received through their assessments, and we were able to kind of target and customize our reach out, our effort. with a targeted list.
Ann or Chris? Was it cold calling? Did you have a list that you went by? Was it, were you targeting? Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, it was really a combination for us. We do a lot of email sends, so that kind of sets a technology threshold right there, since a lot of our marketing is based upon emails. But we also did do some cold call that was targeted at income qualified customers as well. So we did get participation through that or through referrals from our partners. So it was really a combination, but we do rely really heavily on emails. So that, like I said, that does set some sort of threshold for technology.
And Chris?
Yeah, same here. We did targeted email campaigns initially. We also had lists of customers that were already set up for audits in 2020 when the pandemic shut us down and brought us in-house primarily. So we used those to kind of start to facilitate the process. We offered the virtual assessment to them at that point. And if they wanted a virtual assessment, we went ahead and did it. If they wanted to opt until we come back to the field and do it in person, then they was with an already populated list of customers. And then as that was coming down, we were compiling email lists and sending those out to target the community. Yeah.
Okay, and one of the other questions from earlier is, with those of you that did surveys, did you offer any incentive to get people to complete the survey or even to participate?
So for our assessment, we didn't, we do offer incentives just to participate in the program, whether it's virtual or in person. We offer special promotions for them to participate. In terms of like filling out the survey online or sending us photos as a follow-up to show that they've installed measures, we decided not to offer an incentive for that purpose, partly because we have a third-party evaluator coming in after us who does that same thing. So we didn't want folks to sort of confuse our the information that we were trying to take in with the third-party evaluator. So we opted, in terms of trying to get people to email us photos and that type of thing, to not start with an incentive to do that. We're still looking at the possibility to increase that rate by offering them a gift card or something like that.
Shannon?
Yeah, we did offer a $25 incentive to complete the survey for this pilot that we conducted.
Okay, one of the things I wanted to add when you all were talking about email and the technology being, a barrier, the other barrier with email is a lot of people no longer use email anymore. It's very generational. So depending on the age group that is the bulk of your pool that you're going after, they might not even check email. A lot of people just DM, they go only social media, certain types of social medias. So keeping that in mind as it moves forward. Shannon, I do have some questions for you as it relates to coming from an EM&B standpoint. What are some of the risks that you see that ICs and utilities should consider when really looking at starting the process to go into virtual assessments?
Right. Okay. So I think I think one of the first barriers I would have expected would have been contacting the customer. Especially depending on the segment, customer segment that you're working with. I know, for instance, with small business, a lot of in-person interactions are much more successful than online or over the phone. So that would be one thing that I would consider a potential barrier. In terms of risks, one thing that I also had to take into consideration for the pilot that we did was, we didn't really want to ask customers to, climb on ladders or access hard to reach, equipment or areas. So that would be something, right, that to consider as a potential risk. And then I think from an evaluation perspective, probably what keeps me up at night is, how accurate is the reporting that we're getting from customers. So those would be some of the things that I would, think about as potential barriers or risks to address.
Okay, and and this is for everybody, I'm going to start with Chris. What have you experienced? Shannon talked a little bit about risk, but from your vantage point, from the utilities standpoint, what benefits and liabilities have you experienced with virtual assessment? And you've kind of talked a little bit about some of the benefits, being able to do so many more, but what are some of the other benefits that you've encountered?
Well, some of the other benefits have simply been, we're finding customers that we would have had to go find somewhere, a different way. They're coming to us now instead of us having to go to those customers. And the nice way, when they sign up for the virtual assessment, they fill out a 10 question, 12 question questionnaire electronically online. When they sign up, it pops up and they populate it, size of house, age of house, and just some other general questions about it. So we have an idea what we're looking at when we come in. So that's been a good boon for us as far as that goes. It facilitates the process. Also, we've been able to identify through the virtual assessment process multi-family properties that we may not have known about before, because you'll have a customer that'll have a virtual assessment and they'll live at 123 Main Street, apartment A or C or something like that. So they're in a multi-family community. So that gives us another in to try and move to helping the whole community instead of just one apartment at a time if they call in. So that gives us another avenue to access that. So that's been a good boon. Some of the liabilities that what we have are, obviously you're not there. So, if the customer's obviously not going to access their attic, they may not actually be able to access their basement, or, they're not going in a crawl space for sure. So you can't see old wiring, things that, you look for as an auditor to be able to make sure you have a safe property to work in. So, you rely on a third-party vendor at that point on down the road if they qualify for the major measure work to go on and look for those kind of things. So, that's kind of one drawback to the virtual assessment process. I think it's 100% great thing for utility provider or, other programs reaching out to them and concerned with their needs. So that's a big benefit as well. That building of that customer experience, that trust factor, that you sometimes lose, that you can lose with certain things that go on in that kind of process, I guess.
Okay. And what has your experience been as it relates to benefits and risk, particularly speaking from the perspective of an implementation contractor?
Yeah. As Chris mentioned, we definitely could service more people in a day through virtual assessments, but what we also found is that our cancellation rates were a lot higher. So we went through several countermeasures to try to remedy this, increasing reminders. We started with that we would call out to them, but a lot of people would screen our phone calls. So we changed to having them have a dedicated line that they could call into. That helped increase it, but still had issues. We now send out a text about 2 hours before the appointment where they can just hit the phone number and be connected at the time of the appointment. That has helped significantly, but we're still seeing a higher cancellation rate with the virtuals than we do see in person, because I think it's easier for people to decide they don't want to pick up the phone than answering the door when someone's at your front door. So that definitely affects our numbers and our ability to schedule. One of the other unexpected things with the virtuals for us, since we were putting together our own kits, is that we all of a sudden had to be our own mini Amazon. You know, that was not something we expected, all the challenges of shipping, and it definitely impacted, I think, customer satisfaction right off the bat when we had some issues with shipping and out things, and especially when we were getting to the holiday times, and that delayed things. So this year we hired a shipping specialist whose job is to just focus on getting things out, and we haven't had the issues with shipping and then people getting the incorrect things like we did at first. So that was sort of an unexpected lesson learned, is that we had to think about those logistics that we normally wouldn't think about as an IC when it comes to shipping. So and then, of course, the biggest concern is, how our install rates impacted in terms of these DI measures that we're sending out. So we're focusing on electric territory, so it's a lot of LED bulbs. And how we're asking people to send photos and evidence that they've installed them, but they have the bulbs in hand. They don't have to send that information. So that's part of the evaluation process that's occurring this year through consumers, is really looking at what the impact is on install rates for these measures when they're sent out as a kit from these virtual surveys versus us directly installing them.
Thanks, and Shannon,
But-
I'm coming to you now.
I just wanted to add, sorry, one of the benefits that I did forget is that we were, in addition to being able to do more appointments, there are a lot of rural populations that are not as easy for us to do in-person visits for. We have to sort of put them on hold and service them, when we have enough aggregated appointments in an area. The virtuals have been a great tool for being able to access some of those rural areas and not have to wait, 4 weeks to go and visit them. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it dovetails into what Chris was even saying about, finding people that you normally wouldn't find, multifamily units, or reaching people in rural areas, or even smaller businesses, those that are doing the small business types of things. But Shannon, I'm coming on this about install rate, because having worked with Guidehouse for years and other evaluation companies, I often don't understand when that folks are getting kits and things are being sent to them. Once I have the product, I don't owe you anything. I may or may not respond. So what, from the perspective of an evaluation firm, from looking at EMMV, how is that addressed when we can't reach the people after they get the items, if it's installed? We had a conversation the other day specifically to Ann's point about light bulbs. If my light bulbs aren't out yet, I'm not going to put the new light bulbs in. And when you call as an evaluator, you say, did you install them? No, they're all sitting here. But I want you to talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to be nice today, I promise.
I almost believe you, Scott. Yeah, no, it's a good question. So from an evaluator's perspective, what, and I guess I should start off by saying, it does vary, right? By region, by regulator. The examples that I'm thinking of in my mind, if we contact a customer and they haven't installed the light bulb yet, they might intend to, but they haven't yet. We can't give them, first year savings for that measure. So yeah, I understand the conundrum, right? Without having to be able to directly install a measure or a product, it definitely jeopardizes the potential installation rates for customers. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
It's okay. I just think it's interesting. Chris, did you have something you wanted to add there?
Yeah,
I can tell.
with our third-party evaluator, with our third-party evaluator, actually, we had things that we were going to put into the kit evaluated before we started sending them out, just so that we knew what that difference would look like, because we get a different savings rate for an in-person audit because we're actually installing the product. We're putting in the shower heads, we're putting in the light bulbs for them, and we get a higher savings rate for that because they know they're installed. So we had them assess that and see where that would fall. And we've got a savings rate associated with that, if they don't put them in or what have you. I mean, it's just the way it's evaluated. We have a similar program called the Online Energy Checkup that folks can call into and tell us about your house. Is it energy efficient? They ask you about 20 questions, and those 20 questions can balloon out to 200 questions depending upon your answers. But at the end of that, you get an energy savings kit as well. So we had kind of a little bit of experience behind that and how those kits were sent out and installed and what the rates were on those. So, we asked for an evaluation to see where that would land before we started sending those out. It helps.
Yeah, I mean, that was some of the things that we did as well. So those are good things to add for people who've not even experienced or not been exposed to virtual assessments, is from the front end, know the savings difference on that product and understand why and how you can move that forward. But things that you also can do to take that savings value up, verification that it was installed and things of that nature, documenting those things, which some of you have already talked about. So that's a great perspective. A question that's in the chat is, do you think that the lack of customer touch point or the need for customer experience how has that been impacted with virtual assessments? And I think I'm giving that. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's good. I summarized it well. What are your thoughts on that, Ann or Chris and Shannon even? What are your thoughts there? I'll start with you, Ann.
We've gotten really positive feedback from customers, on the phone, calling back in and giving auditors kudos about the assessments. One of the things that I did bring up was the shipping issue, and that sort of impacted customer experience and satisfaction. And that, when we were sending out evaluations, if there was something where the evaluation came to them before the kit came to them, there was definitely a disconnect there in how they would respond about the appointment because they didn't have the kit in hand. I think we, corrected that by having a dedicated resource to do that. But, overall, we've gotten similar positive feedback with the virtuals that we have had with in-person.
Shannon, your thoughts? I saw you shaking your head.
Well, I was actually curious myself, so I was interested to hear that. From my perspective, I don't think we always try to take as much care as we can with our clients' customers, but really I think the personal touch is more important on the implementation side, probably. So yeah, I don't have a lot to add to the conversation. I will say I think customers from the EM&V perspective, we're excited to get an incentive, but other than that, I don't think they missed too much of a personal touch from the evaluator.
So have you seen, and it may be too early on, have you seen a difference in customer sat ratings for people who experience a virtual and an in-person? Have you seen that, or is it too early on to make an assessment there?
Yeah, it's too early on. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I think that would be very interesting as it relates to having someone come to you and having to be, being able to answer questions and things of that nature. Chris, what's your experience there?
I think that it kind of moves both ways. I mean, there are some customers, that you'd rather be, you'd like to be in front of than that personal touch, that connection you can make with your customer one-on-one. Not to say that you can't do that over the phone, but it's always nice to be in front of your customers. Nothing like a handshake or just another person. Sometimes just to talk. Let's face it. Sometimes you go to some of these audits and everybody they want to tell you about all the facets of their life. It yes. Satisfies it, but on the virtual side, you can have that same experience too. So I don't know that the satisfaction rates are different. I think it's more convenient for the customers on the virtual side because they don't have to clean up or they don't have to make time in their schedule per se to have you in their house for 2.5 hours or whatever, what have you, that their concerns might be. So, I think it's too early to tell about, if there's a difference in that. But I think, from an auditing perspective, from where my roots are, there's nothing like being face to face with the customer in their house and, handing them a light bulb or handing them a piece of equipment or showing them an issue in their house where they're like, oh, that light bulb goes off, and they kind of, no pun intended, that goes, that they see, what's happening in their house. So, from an auditing perspective, we'd rather be in person, but I think virtuals are the way that we're headed. And I think that's, just the nature of the landscape we're in at this point.
So what lessons, Anne shared some lessons that, have been learned. What lessons do you think have been learned thus far as it relates to virtual assessments? What pivots have had to be made? Anne talked about the whole shipping piece, which I can imagine how drastically different that was for some people having to do that, or communicating with someone. Can you imagine someone that's a manual person or a hands-on person having to virtually walk somebody through something? I can imagine there are a lot of lessons there. So what lessons have you seen be learned and really come to light in this process? And I'm actually going to start with you.
Yeah, there was a huge transition for our assessors to all of a sudden have to talk on the phone with people. There's different personalities where folks, there's a lot of folks that do better, in person they would on the phone. And so there was a lot of coaching, a lot of, all of our calls are recorded so they can be reviewed. So we did a lot of coaching with them, and there was a lot of hesitancy from the auditor side at first. But after a while, they really appreciated that option as well. We used it as a lever throughout last year. As COVID numbers went up, we pulled people back from the field and went back to virtual. So it was nice for us to have that lever to make sure that we were keeping everyone safe. And the guys really sort of, after that coaching and after that period of getting more comfortable on the phone, talking through, they really enjoyed that contact as well. And, it's interesting, Chris brings up, people wanting to talk when, you go do the assessment in person. We also saw that on the phone, and especially during COVID when people felt so isolated, people definitely appreciated having a connection, whether it be on the phone or when we started coming back in person. There was a need and a appreciation for having a connection with other people, and that spilled over to our auditors as well. So, I think it's a nice tool for us to continue to have, and we'll continue to offer both the in-person and the virtual assessment, especially for those customers like in our rural area where it's harder for us to reach them. But I think the auditors also do enjoy being back out in person and really connecting with people again.
Thanks. And any lessons learned from you, Chris? Additional lessons?
The additional lessons, was in the transition to the virtual audit, when you're doing more talking on the phone. You have to, I think it was just more being, when you're in a house auditing physically, where you're going and what you're looking for. Now you have to direct a person to, I need you to go here and show me this, and they're like, well, why do you want me to look at my registers, or why do you want me to point the phone here? And so visual assessments, and that people are looking at their homes in a different way. Also, I think you have to, the coaching that Anne mentioned, as far as, your words to them, not that you're mean or anything, but you have a different language as an auditor than a customer has. So, you may say something that, clicks in your brain or will click with your contractor, But when you repeat that to the customer, all of a sudden, they have that look on their face like, what did you just say to me? So you kind of have to take a step back and bring it down, to boil it down for them. So I think that was a big lesson learned. And then so that was it. But I mean, a lot of our stuff. I mean, our auditors are BPI certified with lots of with a lot of experience. I'm sure Ann's auditors are as well. So in the transition from going back behind the desk, other than being something like this where we're doing an audit, wasn't, I don't think, a huge step for us. So it was a fairly seamless transition to it, actually. So
Awesome. Anything to add there, Shannon?
Yeah, I think from my experience, one of the lessons that we learned was kind of to Chris's point, that we have to be really thoughtful about the organization of the questions that we ask, in order to streamline the customer's experience and to make sure we're capturing the most accurate data. And that also includes, in some cases, asking the same question but in different ways, just to kind of verify and validate the data that you're collecting. And then I think another lesson that kind of came to light for us, is that virtual assessments or virtual verification, just by the very nature of it, I think can really be strengthened by adding an additional layer of quality assurance or follow up, given that, we're not there to verify or install products ourselves.
So how consistent, and this is for everyone, how consistent did you see the in-person and virtual assessments are? And if you found customers were providing inaccurate or more accurate information when it was virtual, did anybody experience anything like that? Or how consistent were they, the virtual and the in-person assessment? Question from the chat.
So one of the things that we ran into, issues with trying to help customers is that sometimes they really didn't understand what their fuel source was for their heating. We were looking for customers while we were doing this that were electric heat or propane heat. And somewhat surprised by customers not knowing, we try to guide them on what to look for, but in some cases we just had to put unknown for their heat source because we weren't able to get that information from them and from trying to guide them in that process. So there were definitely places where I think doing the video may have helped a little bit more with being able to get that information and make sure it was accurate. So, once again, it's a different experience from being in person. So, I know we'll continue to offer that option. But at the same time, we really still love doing the in-person option as well.
Chris or Shannon? Chris?
Yeah, to piggyback on Ann, that's a great point that a lot of customers were unsure of their fuel source. We're looking for electrically heated homes, and I have a person with a gas furnace that's saying it's an electric furnace just because there's a wire that goes to the side. So I think the virtual assessment process and the questionnaire has taken them into another realm where they're actually learning more about their home. So it's actually an educational piece as well, to kind of help them understand more about their house. So, like, how do I identify this, or, this piece of equipment, or how do I know what I have here? For example, we like to see what the age of some of their appliances are that are base load measures, like refrigerators. So, when you tell a customer, hey, I need you to open that refrigerator up and there's a tag in there on, right by the door, stick your phone there and let me see it. And they sometimes are like, you want me to do what? You trying to see what kind of brand of milk I buy or something? Like, no, that's not it. But, so But when you bring that up to them, and you can take them to an air handler that might be in their garage, say, and it's an air handler for a heat pump, and then you can kind of explain a little bit about how what that is and how it works. They're learning with you, and I think it's a great benefit for them, because you're bringing that in education piece to them. So and you find that the information that we get on our surveys is more accurate, because they're actually taking that initiative to actually go out and find those answers. So it's been good on our side. I haven't noticed where anybody has given false or purposefully misleading information, to say that.
Shannon, anything to add as it relates to the consistency?
Yeah, I will say from an EM&V perspective, right, nothing is quite as reliable or accurate as a third-party verification, or that's not what we're seeing so far on the virtual side. It still is a little early to say. In the pilot that we conducted, we did compare verification results from virtual verification to the field verification, and for some of the products and measures, there was statistically significant results consistent across both, but not for all. So it's kind of a learning experience for us. We're going to have to go back to the drawing board and refine our approach, and see if we can't get virtual results to mirror more closely the field verification.
I will say the report that you referenced earlier is going to be hot when it comes out, to see, what information you all have gathered and what you're seeing. I do want to make a note here that we, SEEL, are also doing a white paper as it relates to virtual assessments and the future of them. And so before I go to the last question, which really talks about where do you see the future of this going, I do want to apologize to everybody within the webinar. Didn't get to all of the chat questions. Great conversation here. But I'm going to start with Chris. What do you see in terms of the energy efficiency, energy waste reduction space, energy optimization space, the future of virtual assessments? How much space will it take up? How do you see it evolving?
From our perspective, virtual assessments are definitely here to stay, and I think that they can evolve in a myriad of different ways. One of those ways, I think, is that we've started to, when we do have a house that requires major measure work, we've actually started using some of that process with our contractors to actually be in the house with them if they have a question. Like, they'll walk us to a specific point. They'll take a camera and they'll go into an attic, and we can look through things and see specific issues. I think the virtual audits expand that, and it's an offshoot, an unintended offshoot of that. But I mean, it's an offshoot of what we can do. The virtual audits also help us highlight or bring or show customers other programs that we may be offering as a utility. They may not know about a products program that we have. We can say, hey, if you're looking to upgrade your heating and cooling system, we offer rebates for that, and we can direct them to different programs that we offer for their benefit. Whether things of that nature. So they're just beginning to scratch the surface of some of the things I think that these virtual audits are going to bring us to. As far as waste reduction, you may be able to identify old baseload measured appliances that you can say, hey, look, we have a rebate program for your freezer, and a recycling piece that we can do for you, because that freezer was built back in 1977. There's more efficient stuff on the market,
Right.
and getting that recycled, through us, and we'll actually give you an incentive to do it. So, that's one example. But they're here and they're staying, and they're going to open things up to what? Oh man, I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you. I think the upside to the virtual audits is limitless.
Thank you. Shannon, your thoughts on the future of virtual assessments?
Yeah, not a whole lot to add in addition to Chris. Just I tend to agree. I think that they're here to stay, especially in these unprecedented times after COVID. there's just going to be a need to be able to implement and verify energy efficiency, virtually without having to enter the home or business. So I definitely see virtual assessments and verification on the horizon.
Thanks. Ann?
Yeah, I definitely agree that they're here to stay. We have seen a drop off in our enrollment in virtual assessments, partly because we've also now had some more dedicated resources for our rural areas, so we can offer appointments there in person sooner. And I think people are getting more comfortable with folks coming into their homes. But there are going to be folks that find the scheduling of a virtual option more convenient for them. And once again, in those rural areas that they can do it more quickly. So I definitely think they're there to stay. And, as people get more comfortable with doing things virtually, that may increase, over time. So they'll be around, but we definitely we love to be there in person when possible.
So great conversation today. I think the answer is they are here to stay, and they have so much space in terms of where they can grow and go. I want to thank Shannon, Ann, and Chris for your participation in this conversation, and all of you who joined us today. Thank you. And we are looking forward to talk to you soon in Q3 as we continue our SEAL webinar series. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Did Ann drop? Did you do the picture? Did they see that? I don't know how to do that.
Okay, so,
She dropped.
yeah, but that's fine. Oh, I'm gonna call her and tell her to log back in.
Hold on one second. Well, I mean, I just wanted you to do it while we were on.
Now you can't because it's speaker view, so I could not get all 45.
Oh.
That's why. Kathy, and I did a few and it didn't work out how you thought.
That was very good conversation. Thank you.
Good. That was fun.
Excellent hosting. Thank you.
Thank you. Shannon, you almost made
That was a good time.
Hey, Ann, can you join back in? We're gonna do a quick panelist picture. Okay. Oh, okay. See, pets. That's why.
Well, her cat jumped on.
The dog outside barking. Okay, all right.
That
All
right
right.
there was distracting me.
Okay.
People were like right there. I was like, ooh.
That was a great conversation, great webinar. That was fun. I like that. Really
So
enjoyed it.
we're at 12:30. I was like, it's just 12:30. And then when I looked back again, it was like, what time? It was like 12:51. I was like, whoa.
Very, very fast.
And I didn't think I missed
No,
questions.
there was a question about what platforms we use.
Oh, I wasn't gonna ask that one.
Yeah, there were, but you want to have to acknowledge.
Yeah, I wouldn't ask. Can somebody ask what platforms that the programs use? I'm not asking y'all that. That's like, I'm not giving out secret sauce on, like, I'm not even gonna put you in a situation. I should have asked Ann and she could have made up something. Oh yeah, we just use Ushukskama.
Next time I'll.
There she is.
Okay, so what I want you to do is go to your snipping tool.
Oh, I gotta do all of this. No, I just do this.
Yeah. Pull it up.
I'm gonna be too close if I do it.
And then close it. Close that out.
Close what up?
Your close
Chat.
the chat. No, this right there. And then close it. Okay, and then go to your snipping tool.
I'm too close.
No, you're not. That's where you're gonna be. All right, now everybody smile.
This is very hard to do.
There you go. You're doing it. Wait, and when you do that.
Wait. I'm slow. Hold on.
Okay, all right, and smile.
Okay, I
It's
did.
perfect.
Okay.
Save it, and now minimize it so we can let them go.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, hold on. It's like I'm in kindergarten.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate
It was a pleasure. Have a good one.
Hey, Patrice, thank you for asking. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris and Shannon. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Hey,
Bye-bye.
take care, everyone.
Thanks, you too.